Hello, my name is Christopher Howe, and I will be doing my presentation today on facial recognition for social networking. And what really caught my interest on the subject is that lately Google has released an application for download for free to the public that allows you to take your images and go out on the web and search and kind of find everything that's related to it. There are older services around, but Google is really the first to pull that together with artificial intelligence too. And as we all know, Google has a massive artificial intelligence behind some of those algorithms that run its search engine. So combined with picture searching, it creates a really interesting, unique tool that gives us an insight as a consumer as to what the capabilities of today and tomorrow will bring. Now, what drives this recognition? Well, first, as we all know, computers only understand ones and zeros. They don't look collectively at an image and interpret it like you and I do. But what they can use is an algorithm to break that picture down into ones and zeros and interpret a pattern. There are many useful examples of this pattern recognition. First is Google Street View. Those photos that you're searching through on ground level, they have to block out license plates, for example, and that would just be too tedious to be done by hand by humans. So they usually leave it to algorithms through the AI to go out and search for those plates or sensitive information and block it. But why does it have to end at plates? We could also do people's pictures, people that are standing out on the corner waiting across the street, for example. And I think Google has really capitalized on functions like this to really be cost savings and improve the quality of their product. And I think the industry, military, law enforcement, they're all kind of catching on to this, that they too can use it to leverage some of the benefits that Google has figured out how to do. Other good uses have been maybe for tracking wildlife, primates, for example. It used to be you could only rely on people who were intimate with the wildlife to spot distinguishing marks on them and kind of try to count and estimate their population levels. But through facial recognition, you could take like a troop of primates and kind of count them much more accurately to get a better estimate of population for policy. But much more back to the human side, a common everyday usage for you and I are the dreaded red eyes that get formed when the flash kind of bounces back on our eyeballs. And the facial recognition can go in and kind of clean that up too. But after it's cleaned up, what stops it from being sent elsewhere, maybe to the military or law enforcement for analysis? But even still, before sending them over to any kind of law or military agency for usage, it can also be used by corporations. Let's say your family photos have a picture of a monument in the background, so maybe they could start gleaming things off of you, like where you like to go, where do you like to travel. For instance, if you're in Washington, D.C. and the Washington Monument's in the background, they can start picking out a pattern based on just you and your pictures of where you've been, what you do, target ads to you. Maybe what kind of food you're eating, based maybe what they see in the photo. Maybe looking at your age. I mean, there's applications out combined with it also, not just the recognition part, but the age estimation, so that way companies can kind of target you with ads based on your demographic. But let's say after your photos are all cleaned up and the military or the police did want to get a hold of them, what kind of ethics does that raise? If you posted on a social media networking site like Facebook, for example, do they have the right or ability to go out without a warrant, for example, and pull your picture, even though you're not suspected of anything, and start putting you into a database? Currently, for example, the FBI has about 93 million records on us in a database for biometrics, including facial recognition. The Army already collects these kinds of items in a war zone when trying to identify enemy combatants, in Afghanistan and Iraq. So there's already two large examples of databases there that are, they're still not perfectly synced up to one another, but they are working to get the Army and the FBI's database talking to one another. And currently, some of the technology is being used in an appropriate way, like high-level felonies, tracking those criminals live, maybe via highway cameras as they try to get away, or stadiums, utilizing the camera systems there, looking at people coming in, looking for known terrorists that, might be trying to set up a plot. But there's nothing really out there to kind of safeguard or any kind of transparency to watch what those who are watching are doing. And I think we would all like to see some of that brought out of the darkness and, put more into the public light so it can be scrutinized who's doing, kind of what, when, and where. And some of that already currently takes place. For example, in Ohio, we have LEADS, which is the law enforcement, database or system. And if there's even odd queries put in there, the Columbus will, call down to whoever to make sure those queries being ran are legitimate and that they are, they have a legitimate police purpose. But without anybody watching, even organizations like IARPA, they want to go out there and collect everything they can on facial recognition. So government agencies like the FTC currently is putting out guidelines on best practices when gathering facial recognition information, but it's still guidelines. While the FTC puts out these guidelines, there's still even more of a need or a want out there for this kind of technology. Banks, for example, banks would like to keep track of what customers come in the door, maybe for fraudulent checks, maybe obviously for bank robbers. And on the other end, for law enforcement, Google is going to equip the Dubai police with Google Glass, which will have the facial recognition technology built in, so that way when they're looking and standing and talking to suspects, it's already recognizing them and profiling, who they are, maybe some places of where they've been recently. And that information, even if it's not on social networking like Facebook or MySpace, it could be already available through large video surveillance networks like the Chicago Police run. Currently, the Chicago PD, they run one of the largest citywide surveillance networks in the world, really often quoted as being behind London itself. And what they do there is they go into stores and businesses, and they run a internet connection through the city, and they say, if you connect to our internet connection and you upload your video, we'll store it for you for free. But then that also allows, if there's a robbery that occurs, for detectives to go back and review that videotape much quicker and much more reliably, that they'll actually have the video. And as that technology is deployed globally in Chicago or Dubai, it's also being scrutinized globally. In Europe, for example, regulators are looking at the legality of facial recognition done through social networking like Facebook, which is really good that people are stopping and taking a look at it, because the technology isn't perfect. Criminals are still able to go out and use that facial recognition, Facebook, photos, and they're still able to perform identity theft off pictures that are already wildly available. And at the end of the day, Google is pouring millions and millions into research and development of this facial recognition with their artificial intelligence. But the human is still far, far superior at picking out photos over the machines currently. And still, even with all the millions, as mentioned previously, that Google is putting in, what you're seeing on the consumer grade level is still a sliver of what's available to law enforcement, the military, and the government. So while I'm excited at the technology and kind of how it's coming along and where it's going, I'd like to see in the future still more safeguards put into place and more transparency on who's searching what, when, and where, so we can all feel a little safer knowing that the new technology, just like any new technology, isn't being abused going forward, so we can all benefit from this.